Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. In this video I am going to discuss about the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system along with the endocrine system coordinates the regulation and integration of bodily functions. The endocrine system sends signal to target tissues by varying the level of blood-borne hormones. In contrast, the nervous system exerts its influence by the rapid transmission of electrical impulses over nerve fibers that terminates at effector cells, which specifically respond to the release of mediator substances. Drugs that produce their primary therapeutic effect by mimicking or altering the function of the anatomic system called a- autonomic drugs. These autonomic agents act either by stimulating portion of the autonomic nervous system or by blocking the action of the autonomic nerves. In this video, I am going to discuss about the fundamental physiology of autonomic nervous system and describe the role of neurotransmitters in the communication between the extracellular events and chemical changes within the cell. Okay, now move towards the introduction of the nervous system. The nervous system is divided into two divisions, that is central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system composed of brain and the spinal cord, while peripheral nervous system includes neurons located outside the brain and spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system is subdivided into efferent division and afferent division. In efferent division, the neurons carry signals away from the brain and spinal cord to the peripheral tissues, while in the afferent division, the neurons of which bring information from the periphery to the CNS. Efferent neurons provide sensory input to modulate the function of the efferent division through reflex arc or neural pathways that mediate a reflex action. Now we see the afferent portion of the peripheral nervous system that is further divided into two major functional subdivisions, that is somatic and autonomic. The somatic efferent neurons are involved in the voluntary control of functions such as contraction of the skeletal muscles essential for locomotion. The autonomic system conversely regulates the everyday requirements of vital bodily functions without the conscious participation of mind. Because of the involuntary nature of the autonomic nervous system as well as its function, it is also known as visceral, vegetative, or involuntary nervous system. It is composed of efferent neurons that innervate smooth muscles of the viscera, cardiac muscles, vasculature, and the exocrine glands, thereby controlling digestion, cardiac output, blood flow, and glandular secretions. Now I move towards the anatomy of the autonomic nervous system, which is composed of efferent neurons, sympathetic neurons, parasympathetic neurons, and enteric neurons. How efferent neurons perform their function? The autonomic nervous system carries nerve impulses from the CNS to the effector organs by way of two types of efferent neurons. These are: the first nerve cell is called preganglionic neuron and its cell body is located within the central nervous system. Preganglionic neurons emerge from the brainstem or spinal cord and make a synaptic action in the ganglia, which is an aggregation of nerve cell bodies located in the peripheral nervous system. These ganglia function as relay stations between a preganglionic neuron and a second nerve cell, the postganglionic neuron. The later neuron has a cell body originating in the ganglion. It is generally non-myelinated and terminates on effector organs such as smooth muscles of the viscera, cardiac muscles, and exocrine glands. Now I move towards the afferent neurons. The afferent neurons of the autonomic nervous system are important in the reflex regulation of this system. For example, by sensing pressure in the carotid sinus and aortic arc, and in signaling the CNS to influence the efferent branch of the system to respond. Now I move toward the sympathetic neurons. The efferent autonomic nervous system is divided into the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, as well as the enteric nervous system. Anatomically, the sympathetic and parasympathetic neurons originate in the CNS and emerge from two different spinal cord regions. The preganglionic neuron of the sympathetic system come from thoracic and lumbar region, which is T1 to L2 of the spinal cord, and they synapse in two cord like chains of ganglia that run close to and in parallel on each side of the spinal cord. The preganglionic neurons are short in comparison to the postganglionic ones. Axons of the postganglionic neuron extend from these ganglia to the tissues that they innervate and regulate. The sympathetic nervous system is also called the thoracolumbar deviation because of its origins. In most cases, the preganglionic nerve endings of the sympathetic nervous system are highly branched, enabling one preganglionic neuron to interact with many postganglionic neurons. This arrangement enables this deviation to activate numerous effector organs at the same time. But we should notice that the adrenal medulla, like the sympathetic ganglia, receives preganglionic fibers from the sympathetic system. Lacking axons, the adrenal medulla, in response to stimulation by the ganglionic neurotransmitter acetylcholine, influences other organs by secreting the hormone epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and lesser amounts of norepinephrine into the blood. Now I move toward the parasympathetic neurons. The parasympathetic preganglionic fibers arise from the cranial nerves 3, 7, 9, and 10, as well as from the sacral region of the spinal cord and synapse in the ganglia near or on the effector organs. The vagus nerve accounts for 90% of the preganglionic parasympathetic fibers in the body. Postganglionic neurons from this nerve innervate most of the organs in the thoracic and abdominal cavity. Due to the origin of parasympathetic nervous system, it is also called the craniosacral deviation. Thus, in contrast to the sympathetic system, the preganglionic fibers are long and the postganglionic ones are short, with the ganglia close to or within the organ innervated. In most instances, there is one-to-one connection between the preganglionic and postganglionic neurons, enabling the discrete response of this division. Now I move towards the enteric neuron, which is the third division of autonomic nervous system. It is the collection of nerve fibers that innervates the gastrointestinal tract, pancreas, and gallbladder, and it constitutes the brain of the gut. This system functions independently of the CNS and controls the motility, exocrine and endocrine secretion, and microcirculation of the GI tract. It is modulated by both the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, now move towards the function of the sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system has the property of adjusting in response to stressful situations such as trauma, fear, hypoglycemia, cold, and exercise. In other words, we can say sympathetic division is the state of active and alert. Now we see the effect of stimulation of sympathetic division. The effect of sympathetic output is to increase heart rate and blood pressure, to mobilize energy stores of the body and to increase blood flow to skeletal muscles and the heart while diverting flow from the skin and the internal organ. Sympathetic stimulation results in dilation of the pupils and bronchioles. It also affects GI motility and the function of the bladder and sexual organs. What is the second response? That is flight or fight response. The changes experienced by the body during emergency have been referred to as the fight or flight response. These reactions are triggered both by the direct sympathetic activation of the effector organs and by stimulation of the adrenal medulla to release epinephrine and lesser amounts of norepinephrine. Hormones released by the adrenal medulla directly enter the bloodstream and promote responses in effector organs that contain adrenergic receptors. The sympathetic nervous system tends to function as a unit and often discharges as a complete system. For example, during severe exercise or in reactions to fear, this system, with its diffuse distribution of postganglionic fibers, is involved in a wide array of physiologic activities. Although it is not essential for survival, it is nevertheless an important system that prepares the body to handle uncertain situations and unexpected stimuli. Now I go towards the function of the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic division is involved with maintaining homeostasis within the body. To accomplish this, it maintains essential bodily functions such as digestive processes and elimination of wastes. The parasympathetic division is required for life. It usually acts to oppose or balance the actions of the sympathetic division and is generally dominant over the sympathetic system in rest and digest situation. The parasympathetic system is not a functional entity as such and it never discharges as a complete system. If it did, it would produce massive, undesirable, and unpleasant symptoms such as involuntary urination and defecation. Instead, discrete parasympathetic fibers are activated separately, and the system functions to affect specific organs such as the stomach or eye. Now I move toward the role of CNS in the control of autonomic function. Although the autonomic nervous system is a motor system, it does require sensory input from the peripheral structures to provide information on the state of affairs in the body. This feedback is provided by streams of afferent impulses originating in the viscera and other autonomically innervated structures that travel to integrate centers in the central nervous system such as the hypothalamus, medulla oblongata, and spinal cord. These centers respond to the stimuli by sending out efferent reflex impulses via the autonomic nervous system. Let's see about the reflex arc. Most of the afferent impulses are transplanted into reflex responses without involving consciousness. For example, a fall in the blood pressure causes pressure sensitive neurons, baroreceptor in the heart, vena cava, aortic arc, and carotid sinuses to send fewer impulses to cardiovascular centers in the brain. This prompt reflects response of increased sympathetic output to the heart and vasculature and decreased parasympathetic output to the heart, which results in the compensatory rise in the blood pressure and tachycardia. What should we note? In each case, the reflex arcs of the autonomic nervous system comprise a sensory or afferent arm and a motor or efferent or effector arm. Next, we have emotions and autonomic nervous system. Stimuli that evoke strong feelings such as rage, fear, and pleasure can modify the activities of autonomic nervous system. Now let's talk about the innervation by the autonomic nervous system. Many effector organs of the autonomic nervous system have dual innervation. meaning that they receive competition input from the sympathetic and parasympathetic deviance. The sympathetic system increase heart rate, whereas the parasympathetic system decrease heart rate. In other words, we can say that dual innervation in most organs in the body are innervated by both deviants of autonomic nervous system. Thus, vagal parasympathetic innervation slows the heart rate, and sympathetic innervation increases the heart rate. Despite this dual innervation, one system usually predominates in controlling the activity of given organ. For example, in the heart, the vagus nerve is the predominant factor for controlling rate. This type of antagonism is considered to be dynamic and is fine tuned at given time to control homeostatic organ functions. This activity of system represents integration of influence of both deviants. Organs receiving only sympathetic innervation. Although most tissues receive dual innervation, some effector organs such as the adrenal medulla, kidney, pilometer muscles, and sweat glands receive innervation only from the sympathetic system. The control of blood pressure is also mainly a sympathetic activity with essentially no participation by the parasympathetic system. What is somatic nervous system? The efferent somatic nervous system differs from the autonomic system in that a single myelinated motor neuron originating in the central nervous system travels directly to skeletal muscles without the mediation of ganglia. As noted earlier, the somatic nervous system is under the voluntary control, whereas the autonomic system is involuntary. Responses in the somatic deviant are generally faster than those in the autonomic nervous system. Now, finally, I'm going to summarize this topic with the differences between sympathetic and parasympathetic system. Major differences in the anatomical arrangement of the neurons lead to the variation of the function in each deviant. The sympathetic nervous system is widely distributed, innervating practically all effector system in the body. In contrast, the parasympathetic deviant distribution is more limited. The sympathetic preganglionic fibers have a much broader influence than the parasympathetic fibers and synapse with a larger number of postganglionic fibers. This type of organization permits a diffuse discharge of sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic deviant is more circumscribed with mostly one-to-one interactions, and the ganglia are also close to or within organs they innervate. This limits the amount of the branching that can be done by this deviant. The anatomical arrangement of the parasympathetic system results in the distinct function of this deviant. The somatic nervous system innervates skeletal muscles. One somatic motor neuron axon is highly branched and each branch innervates a single muscle fiber. Thus, one somatic motor neuron may innervate 100 muscle fibers. This arrangement leads to the formation of a motor unit. The lack of ganglia and the myelination of the motor nerves enable a fast response by this somatic nervous system. As we can see in the picture how parasympathetic and sympathetic system are different from each other. For more information, like, subscribe my channel. Thank you.